Ready? Sit. Sit. Waxy, sit. Sit.
Are you gonna go run? Oh. She's smarter than you. Hello, welcome back to Hunter Tuned. It's been a little bit, but I have been working my tail off trying to get the Mustang done for the JJ DeBoss arm drop race that happened at Wisconsin International Raceway this past weekend. And well, needless to say, I finished the Black Betty Mustang and it's up and running, making passes, making horsepower, and everything like that. And I kind of wanted to go over the car with you guys and show you what we all did to it. Kind of sort of last minute. I was notified about it a little over a month ago. Pretty much right when my last video was, I found out about this race and I said, okay, I'm shutting the world out and I'm getting this car done, because when the hell else am I gonna get to race with JJ DeBoss and the guys from Memphis Street Outlaws ever again at Wisconsin International Raceway? It's a once in a lifetime type of thing. So I'm like, I gotta get this car done and I gotta just do it. So like I said, I'm gonna go over the car with you guys, show some of the passes that the car made at the race, and go from there. So I will probably insert some pictures that I've have been taking and putting on my Facebook, my personal Facebook page. If you guys don't follow me or add me as a friend on there, I usually post stuff like as I do it on Facebook, but it's a lot harder and more time consuming to make videos and edit them when I'm on such a time crunch to get the car done. So that's kind of what we did, is we just been out here thrashing on this thing. And needless to say, guys, it's like one of my dream come true builds. This thing is freaking sick. So I guess we'll start under the hood. Like I said, kind of go through some stuff that we did. I'm sorry that I didn't really film like a lot of the process, but there's so much more to come with this car. We just needed to get it like finished, quote unquote finished. We needed to get it done so we could at least drive it and take it up to the race and do all that kind of stuff. And it's a lot easier to focus on a project when I got nothing else that I'm worrying about. With like, if I'm worrying about filming every step of the process, it's a lot harder to actually like get the work done, where if I'm not in such a time crunch or so busy all the time it's a little easier to film stuff then. So I appreciate everybody's patience with the videos and stuff, but needless to say, I'm gonna quit fucking jibber jabbering and show you what a monster that I built. All right, so here we are under the hood of my SN95 Mustang. So you guys know I bought this car as a rolling shell, and it came with like Team Z front K member and cross member for the transmission, all kind of already set up for an LS. So I just built the motor. In one of the previous videos, we put together this aluminum L33 with the Summit Pro LS rods and pistons. I went with the dome pistons, not the dish, so they're high compression. And then we just did a resurface on the block and the heads. These are 799 heads, and they have the Tick Performance dual valve springs and 7400 hardened push rods. It has the Michigan Motorsports trunnion upgrade in the rollers, or the rocker arms. I put a Melling high flow, high volume oil pump in it. I did the, what the hell else did I do in the motor? It has Melling drop-in replacement lifters, and also has the Tick Performance Stage 3 Turbo Cam. So a lot of stuff from Tick Performance on this car, including the air-to-water intercooler that sits in the intake manifold of the Holley low ram intake manifold that I bought for this car. I did that because I wanted it to clear the hood, and it does. So as you guys can see, this car, the hood completely shuts. There's no like holes or nothing. I can actually run a hood on it. etc., etc. So that's kind of why I went with the low ram and the smaller TIC performance air-to-water intercoolers, because I wanted to fit a hood on the car. But as for the motor, like I said, we went through the whole thing. It's balanced and everything, so we weighed all the parts, welded onto the crankshaft to make sure that the balance of the crank and everything was good. And this thing runs awesome. It's got over 100 pounds of oil pressure at 7,000 RPM. It just runs super clean. Like, this is one of the best running LS's I've ever put together for sure. And then moving on, we have we'll just start from the front of the car and run back. I put a little small Honda Civic radiator in the car just because it is a race car and she's going to be living her life about a quarter mile at a time. So I figured the little radiator would probably do okay because there's no obstructions in the front of the car. There's no intercooler blocking the flow, nothing. And at the track, when I did run it, the car got up to about 200 degrees or so, and then as soon as I ended the pass and was rolling down the return road, the damn thing went down to like 188. So the cooling system actually works out fairly well, but the rest of the cooling system also helps. It has a shroud, a fan shroud on the little radiator, so that shroud actually captures all of the heat in the radiator and shoves it out the fan instead of somebody just zip tying a fan onto the fins of the radiator like I normally do. That will not necessarily capture all the heat out of the radiator. So did that, plus like I said, this is an aluminum engine, so the aluminum stuff typically cools a little bit better. And it also has a Philadelphia Racing Products electric water pump. Roxy and Christine have been a big help with the car as well. So anyways, the cooling system, like I said, is fairly basic, but this car doesn't really have any cooling issues so far. We were running it about an 80-degree day and didn't seem to have too many issues, so I'm very pleased with that. And then moving farther forward, we obviously have the two turbos from huntertune.com. These are VS Racing 6262s with the mirror image configuration. So obviously one turbo spins one way, one turbo spins the other, so it's all symmetrical looking. You don't have one turbo that has the outlet on the bottom and one on the top kind of thing. Both of the outlets are coming out the top, going into this Y pipe. That local guy from Team Defiant is their shop name. He actually welded this merge deal together. So it's a 3-inch intercooler pipe on both sides going into a 4-inch into the 102 millimeter throttle body that I actually had to flip backwards for hood clearance because this little stub that sits on the top of these throttle bodies actually was hitting the hood. So I flipped it, got this cable bracket adapter from Motion Raceworks that actually bolts onto the Holley intake manifold there and runs the throttle body backwards. So that works perfectly. And then I did ball up here and spent some money on this frickin' clamp. This is the Vibrant intercooler clamp. It just comes off with this little pin, and then we can open this up, and underneath this shield there's actually two O-rings that seal the pipe together, and obviously the flanges are all welded on, so no chance for blowing off the pipe at the throttle body, which I had a lot of issues with on my Fox body. I would always blow the clamp and coupler off of the throttle body because these throttle bodies, they don't really have that big of a lip to clamp onto. I think I actually have a throttle body somewhere laying around. So anyways, this will keep the pipes from blowing off of the throttle body for sure, and then these are just kind of straight off, so it's going to be kind of difficult to blow those off, I'm hoping. If so, I may get some more V-bands for the turbo onto the intercooler pipe, but for now I think this will work just fine. Then moving forward, we already talked about the water pump and stuff like that. The car has just two -4 AN feed lines coming off of an ICT billet dual outlet oil cooler deal, so you can run two 1/8-inch things off of the oil pan where the oil cooler normally goes. I got one of those from ICT billet, and then I also got the ICT billet drain for the timing cover. So it has two 10AN90s coming off of the timing cover down there. So yeah, anyways, moving on. Two 3.5-inch 90s from the semi shop for exhaust right out the fender, which actually looks really nice. I actually have these trim rings from 269 Motorsports that I may be putting on soon, but I haven't gotten around to it yet. But they do look actually fairly good, in my opinion. And then obviously with the mirror image 6262s, we also have the VS Racing 44mm wastegates on the car, which are running CO2 going to them, which we'll talk about here shortly. So that's why we have this low dollar Motorsports 0 to 100 PSI sensor installed into the top of the wastegate. That is for our dome control into the Holly, so the Holly kind of knows what the pressure is in the wastegate in order to regulate the boost. Obviously we got the headlights, corner markers, all that stuff's wired in. This car was nothing like 3 weeks ago. There was nothing in this car, no wires, no engine, no anything, and it's this. So like I said, I'm gonna go into some detail on certain things with whatever you guys have questions on. I'd love to maybe make dedicated videos to one thing or another, but this is just gonna be kind of an overview, maybe a little long-winded because that's, you know, that's the nature of me, Hunter Tuned. I talk a lot, but I like to explain stuff to people and kind of show them what it is and what stuff does. And sometimes when you explain stuff thoroughly, it takes a little bit longer. Like this fucking video is already 13-14 minutes long. Moving on, it has the wastegates we talked about. These are just some eBay forward headers. So they're the up and forward style 1 7/8" runner headers that come out to a 3-inch collector, and they 3-inch 90 all mandrel bent right into the turbo, which is all V-bands. Like the inlet for the turbo is a V-band, fucking outlet's a V-band. This is a 102 housing, turbine housing, I believe, or it's like 112, 110, 102. It's a 104 AR turbine housing, so these things should breathe quite a bit at high RPM. Usually the bigger the turbine housing, the more you can get out of the turbo. So and like I said, they're up and forward, but I ran them backwards. So I ran the driver on the passenger and the passenger on the driver, and ran them down and forward, so we didn't really have too many issues with spark plugs and spark plug wire clearance. It's still a little bit tricky here, but it ain't too bad. We got little stuff like the ICT billet valley cover plate, which I really like. They're cheap, and they definitely ease up on the valley cover. Instead of running the factory one with the knock sensors in or out of it, sometimes they leak out and whatever. This valley cover plate's like 40 bucks, and they look good and work great. Just running some basic stock truck coils that I had laying up in my stash of junk. I just threw those on. They're the wrong ones, but they seem to work great for me. They're like the heat sink ones that people say that, you know, are having issues with, but I ran these on the Fox body, and I'm gonna run them on here too, and they seem to be working out just fine. This is the Holley low ram with the Tick Performance intercooler I was talking about. It's air to water, so we have dash 16 hoses running up from a tank in the trunk. It's an ice tank or a water tank that runs up into the intercooler here and circulates ice water through the intake manifold. So we have raw ice water going to the air right before it hits the motor. So that's an awesome little deal. Definitely simplifies the setup. I don't have to run piping all over the place, cut up the front bumper, nothing like that. And that was kind of the goal with this car, is to keep it clean and simple. And speaking of clean and simple, we did not run an alternator on this car. There's no accessories at all. It has the electric water pump, and it has a Summit SFI approved crank damper onto the crankshaft. That's all. There's no accessories. There's no belt to throw off, nothing. This car just runs off battery power, and I'll get to that here in a second as well. Before you guys hate on that, I may run an alternator on the car eventually, but for now, the time crunch that we had, whatever, it just wasn't really in the cards. But honestly, I don't think I'm going to plan on running an alternator on the car, because the battery that I got, I ran for 45 minutes on Friday when we were racing. I never charged the car once. it works out great. And that's with a lot of electronics. The big fuel pump, water pump, intercooler pump, radiator fan, Holley terminator, you name it. Headlights, taillights. Didn't have an issue. So moving on with the intake, we are running Bosch 210 injectors from huntertune.com in this car. Runs flawless. Honestly, the car runs super smooth and everything. I'm like speechless with this car. I'm talking about it like it's, I don't know, it's just crazy. I never thought I'd build something like this. But yeah, this is a catch can from Ben. Ben Laley, I think is his last name. Sorry if I butchered his last name, but he actually sent this catch can. It's just a basic 2 in or 1 in, 1 out kind of deal. 2 in, not 1 in, 1 out. It's both just in. So 2 10ANs. He also sent these black powder coated valve covers, or they're black, wrinkle black painted valve covers with 10AN bungs on the back where the PCV normally is, and then the other side it goes into about the same spot of the valve cover back there. So both of those just run into this can for venting of the engine. BR7 EF plugs, pretty basic shit there. These is aerospace brake cylinder that we did. I ran brand new copper brake lines on the car all around, and then we had to adapt the master cylinder to the pedal because this car was a hydro boost car, and the hydro boost system runs off power steering, so I didn't want to run a power steering pump or anything on this car. I wanted to kind of keep it keep as much drag off of the engine as I could and just make horsepower and transfer it to the wheel. I don't want to transfer nothing through an alternator. I don't transfer none of that shit. I just want to go fast, and that's what the goal is with this car. So like I said, trying to just keep it simple and make it go fast. It's a race car. So anyways, the brake cylinder we had to run new brake lines like I was talking about, and then we had to drill the pedal down in here for a new hole that was actually higher up so we could get more leverage, because this is a manual brake system now instead of assisted braking, which typically you want to kind of run a manual setup, because if you jam the brake too hard on a power assisted car, a lot of times the tires will lock up and sometimes cause an accident. I run manual brakes on a lot of really high power stuff just because it's safer in my opinion. So the brakes don't lock up, like I was saying. Obviously, we've talked about suspension and stuff on this car already in previous videos. If you guys haven't watched the Black Betty videos, you should probably go check that shit out. Low dollar fuel pressure sensor, same sensor that runs on the wastegate. It's the 0 to 100 sensor from Low Dollar Motorsports. We're also running in our fuel pressure regulator. It's just a cheapo eBay, I don't know, it's like $30 freaking fuel pressure regulator. It's got 8AN crossover, 8AN return line, 10AN feed coming up. So that's what it's on for fuel lines. This is all Evil Energy is the brand on Amazon AN hose. It all seems to work pretty good. The fittings were all really nice. Everything kind of went together great, in my opinion, for the hoses. I do have to get some different plug wires. A lot of these are zip tied out of the way so they don't hit like a lot of the header runners. None of them are burnt off or anything, but they are kind of close and they don't look the greatest. The coils don't look the greatest. If it had nice coils and wires on it, I think it would kind of really finish the look of the car. And if I can maybe patch a lot of the holes on the firewall eventually, but that's all stuff that we can do later. I'm sure we will be doing later, but for now and the rest of the season, we're going to have a race car and actually be able to go racing, which is amazing. And it's just a dream come true. It's been a long time coming, and I've been in a kind of a rut ever since this COVID stuff. I've just been in a rut with trying to find motivation and reasoning to do anything. So to get this done is a blessing in disguise for me, and it definitely can motivate me even more to build some more cool shit, which I have in the works already. Because when I start working on stuff, it's kind of a snowball effect, and I just don't quit. So I'm either all go or nothing. It's probably why I like drag racing. I'm either to the wood or I'm completely off the gas. I don't know what else in the engine bay we can really talk about here. not a whole lot. We already talked about the throttle. It's got a VS Racing blow-off valve that we did have some issues with. It was sticking. I had to actually grease up the diaphragm when I was on the dyno the first night. Yeah, so obviously water lines. Yeah, I think that's kind of it for the engine bay for the most part. Last thing in the engine bay I didn't talk about is we have the dual solenoids. So this is two 3-port MAC valves that run CO2 pressure through and to the top of the wastegates. Over here, every line on the car is this push lock stuff. It's like the, you know, push lock air line. And that stuff seems to work pretty good, doesn't blow off, don't really have issues with it. So went with that on everything of the car. Taxi! Oh, coming in hot.
No bite though. Hey, no bite. Calm, calm, no bite.
We're still trying to get her to calm down a little bit.
No bite, no bite.
And she still likes to
Stop
nibble.
it, Roxy. Hey.
We've tried a lot of training stuff with Roxy, but we're still learning, and she's still a little pup, so we're hoping to get some stuff dialed in with her soon. But she's been a great dog.
Is your car you're tuning?
Yeah, she's a car. She's just like a car. You just gotta treat it the same way, you know?
Kisses. Good girl.
So moving on into the car here, the shifter already came with it. I bought these cheap seats from a guy down the street. They don't really fit that great, but for now, they'll do the job. Holley Terminator X powers this car. These are the water lines running back, and then I just have a lot of the wiring running through to my little fuse panel down here. I got to clean a lot of this up, but everything's relayed. The lights, the starter, the water pump, the second water pump, the trans brake input, the you know, the ignition for the Holley, the fuel pump. Yeah, I mean, it's just all super fancy. I gotta just clean it up a little bit more, but for now, like I said, keeping everything kind of simple so it's easy to diagnose if we got an issue. Here's my CO2 bottle that I actually bought from a local welding shop. I was gonna like buy from Motion Raceworks and stuff like that, but it was like almost twice the price versus going to the, you go to like a local brewery or a soda company or whatever and buy a CO2 bottle. And then I just got a regulator that's adjustable, running about 70, I think I'm running 75 PSI of bottle pressure. Yep, so we're running 75 pounds of bottle pressure. This is an adjustable regulator, so we can always play with that down the road. There's so much shit on this car, guys. It's awesome. It's super cool. It's just a little overwhelming. Obviously, I could have made 100 videos on this car building it, but if I'd have been up editing all night instead of out here till 3 in the morning working on it, I wouldn't have made the race. You know, sorry to say, but that's just kind of the cold hard truth of building stuff. Sometimes it's not the easiest to film it. What? Moving on to the back of the car here. I put some hood pins for my trunk. It actually turned out pretty good. I like it. Because the trunk latch on this car was broken and I didn't have time to find a new one or order a new one, so hood pins for the win. Race car life. So here is my fuel cell slash air to water tank for the intercooler. So the right side is for my air to water intercooler. So we put ice water in here, and then a little bilge pump pumps the water up through the intercooler. It's all ran through here. I mean, just the little shit that we did with this car to like make it kind of like legit-ish or clean. Something I'm kind of, you know, can be proud of is like all the wiring in the car has got loom on it or this shear skin. It's like a Chinese fly trap or Chinese, you know, them little push-pull skins is all over the wiring on this car to kind of keep it from shearing on anything or, you know, resist impact a little bit more. So all that's wired. Tail lights work. Obviously we have the left side is a fuel cell, so it's 5 gallons on each side. I ordered this tank from Rhodes Race Cars. My buddy with the blue Fox body that we tuned not too long ago had the same setup, and I'm like, that is slick. I need that. Just keep it simple. So we have our kill switch down here, and then we have 2 battery lugs for charging the battery. So we just hook up to this when we need to charge the car up. And for battery, we are running the XS Power. It's a D1600. I think it has like over an hour of reserve capacity or whatever. So I mean, we could run the car for like almost an hour using, I think it's like 80 amps or something. Ridiculous. And the battery has been amazing so far. Like I said, we don't even run an alternator on this car, and I ran it for nearly 45 minutes and still had over 15.5 volts on the battery. So that's awesome. When it's fully charged, we run around 16.5. And another reason I went with the 16 volt battery is because A, I'm going to get more out of the water pump for the intercooler. I'm going to get more out of the water pump on the engine. I'm going to get more out of the fan. I'm going to get more out of the fuel system. I'm going to get more out of everything, because more voltage is just going to power everything that much better, cool that much better, flow that much better. That's kind of why I did it. The starter, I mean, it cranks up like a crotch rocket. I'll show you here in a second. But yeah, so that's all that stuff. I painted the cage a little bit more so than I did since you guys saw last. We did add some stickers to the car, just to kind of show off some of the parts. ICT billet, super badass sticker we put on there that I got from those guys quite a while ago. Honestly, I've had a lot of these parts laying around for like a year. I've been kind of hoarding parts for this car, and then I just all of a sudden slammed it all together in the last couple weeks. So this side of the car, obviously 269 Motorsports, Summit, Motion Raceworks, the XS Power, and then my name here for at the track. So when they pull you up in the lanes, they kind of know who's running the car. Yeah, next we'll probably go underneath the car. I'll show you inside the driver compartment here for a second. The car has a sweet steering shaft, a sweet manufacturing. It's got new race quip harnesses. So in the cockpit here, obviously the ECU, some of the wiring and stuff. It's got a B&M, I don't know what, fucking pro ratchet shifter or something. You just pull it once for each gear. So like neutral, first gear, and then second and third. This car is a Turbo 400 car. The transmission that's in it is got a hipster brake, or I don't know exactly what trans brake's in it. I think it's a hipster brake with, it's got the SFI bell housing. So they cut the trans at the pump and then put the aftermarket bell housing on. And then it's running a Freak Show converter. Right now, it's what we had laying around. Christian was going to use it for his, but I felt it would suit this car a little bit better because it's just a different stator and shit like that compared to what the other converter that I had sitting here, which was a Jegs XHD, which I felt like might have been a little loose for the car, and this Freak Show might be a little loose too. I have no idea what it's really going to do on a prep track and stuff, which we'll find out soon enough. I got this Moroso. Hopefully the lighting will pick this up. This is a Moroso cage mounted switch panel, so we just tacked the one end and then it unscrews here to unbolt. There's a little better look at the switch panel. So that's all the wiring runs through that snake skin stuff, like I said, all along the cage. My last Fox body, I mean, I literally just had the wires zip tied to the cage. We actually took time to run this stuff a little bit cleaner, minus the Terminator 3.5-inch screen. I just zip tied that son of a bitch to the rearview mirror, but you know, time crunch. I did that the day of the race because it was just chilling on the floor before that. So this steering wheel I actually got out of that Civic that's sitting right there. I was laying in the trunk when I bought it, so this actually worked out pretty good. I didn't even have a steering wheel for the car. So little stuff like that kind of really just made this car come together. And another reason that I didn't really film a lot of this stuff is because I just wanted to enjoy building the car, and I wanted to enjoy just kind of being in the moment and enjoy what I'm putting together. It's a little bit tough to do that when you're filming everything. You can't really be present when you're worried about the camera all the time. So that's kind of why I do a lot of overviews after I build the car, or talk about stuff afterwards so I can explain it better to you guys. Alright, so I got the car up on the hoist now. I'm going to kind of show you guys underneath all the stuff that we did here. There's our wastegate dumps. It's crazy, after running this car for a while, nothing's leaking yet, other than like a little dampness on the pan here. I don't know if that's from when I changed the oil or what that's from, but yeah. Fuel lines all ran here. Shifter cable, got the wiring going to the starter, return line, tranny lines. This is an Action Machine aluminum drive shaft. It's got Spicer U-joints in it with the Sunex yoke up front. I made a drive shaft hoop out of a U-bolt. I also put a brand new set of the ET Radio Pro tires on the car before the event. Back here we have the transmission cooler mounted back here, so it's out of the way of the heat of the front of the car where the engine and everything is. I typically like to run the cooler, you know, not by the engine or anything, because sometimes, at least on my last Fox body, I had a ton of overheating issues because the transmission cooler and intercooler were in front of the radiator. So that's another reason why I did the stuff I did on this car, to not have anything in front of the radiator to help the car cool better. Because a lot of times, whenever I have hurt LS engines, which isn't very often, the times they do get hurt or broken is when the car runs hot. So anyways, here's some of that wiring going back to like the bumper charging ports and the kill switch here. Got our copper brake lines all hung up in the stock spot with the stock clips. But yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. This thing's all together now, and I couldn't be happier with it. Makes me eager to get back out racing soon, and maybe doing some more no prep stuff with the car as soon as we actually get some more time with it. I literally made like one pass before the races that you guys saw, and in the second round I actually lost because all the nerves and jitters got the best of me. Racing with JJ and acting like a street outlaw was definitely super fun, but they did do a chase as a race. So the guy that I was racing in a Fox body in the second round jumped. He jumped pretty early. He jumped pretty much right as JJ was starting to pull me in. As he was pulling me in, the other guy took off, and I was gonna sit, because if I would have sat and not moved, I'd have won that race. But you know, kind of going through the motions in my head, I let off the gas to sit there, and then as soon as I let off the gas, I also let off the trans brake, not thinking that the car would bump forward. And it bumped forward, and I lost the race. It's kind of been tearing me up a little bit, because I really wish I'd have won making a pass down the track, but I bumped, and the guy was already halfway down the track by the time my car moved. So you live, you learn. I definitely will be a little bit more prepared for next time if we do one of these chases a race deals. But it was definitely an experience, but I can't wait to actually get on some prep. Some real prep, and get a time with this car, because I mean, I like no prep racing and no time racing, but at the end of the day, I like to show off what I can build and how fast I can actually go, instead of hiding it like a lot of these guys do. So I'm not too worried about showing off times. As you guys know, I like to show times, and a lot of people are already asking me like, oh, what'd the car run? Because they want to know like how fast the car really is, and that's the one way to prove it, other than being on the dyno. So I did get some dyno graphs with the car too. On about 20 pounds of boost, the car made 920 to the wheels, and on wastegate pressure around 14 pounds, I think we made a little over 800. And I can't thank Matt Happel enough. The day before the race, I was on the dyno with the car till 3 in the morning, and Matt Happel actually helped me out, try to get this car dialed in as best as we could. And here's some of the results from the other day. 928 is the best we made. And there's actually some pulls on here from the first night, and you can tell how much better the car had got. From tuning. So this pull right here, you can see how far down the car was on power in the mid-range, and this was because the blow-off valve was leaking, and when it hit, the boost came right up, but the blow-off valve was sticking, so it would have no boost, no boost, no boost, and then it would slam shut, and it acted like a nitrous car, and it was like just stood right up. But after I fixed the blow-off valve, these turbos spooled so fast. I think right around 4 grand we hit full boost. I mean, yeah, like 4 grand or so we hit full boost. You can see here, this is the curve of the dyno. Peak torque's like 5 grand, and this turbo kit and these turbos light off so fast and so hard that it's definitely going to be a contender to race with, because it's going to have a lot of overall power. A lot of these guys will have really big turbos and stuff, like on Hondas and stuff like that, where the power, they make a lot of power, but they only make it for a short amount of time. Where this car is going to make power everywhere, and it's going to make peak power everywhere, from 4 grand until 8 grand. That's the goal, at least. So, but this combination on a stock engine would be really hard on the bottom end. That's why I built the motor and I put rods in it and stuff like that, because I wanted a really fast car. So hopefully we can make it fly. Before the next time we go racing, I want to do a gear change, because this car has 410s in it right now, and let me just say, she's a little wild out of the hole. At that no prep race, I was spinning in 3rd gear going down the track. So and it was just, I launched on like 3,200 RPM and about 2 pounds of boost, and the car pulled the wheels off the ground. And I think if I do a gear change from a 410 to a 355, I think that's going to soften up the leave, so I can leave on more power and have more power available sooner, versus with the 410 having to really baby it out of the hole. But it's already showing huge potential, and I can't, I'm super excited to get this thing ripping and dialed in even more. But just for throwing it together and making this race, I'm super happy with how the car did. I'm assuming it probably, you know, in the 9s right now. I had the car on wastegate pressure the whole night because, you know, it was no prep and the track was garbage. There was nothing out there. JJ and those guys actually pulled us up farther because the starting line was so bad, nobody could even get out of the hole. Like, I don't think there was a single car there that actually could leave on any power. So they actually moved the starting line forward so guys could get the launch out. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video and the update, long-winded. I'm also going to be buying one of these simple stage kits. This is going to be my bump box. It's going to allow the car to pull into the beams and actually race on a tree, instead of how I normally do stuff is I just wait for the light to come down and then I leave whenever I feel like it. I want to try to actually race with this car. So that simple stage is going to let the car roll forward instead of bump really hard and upset the suspension. My last car had that, it had a different style bump box in it, and most bump boxes, when you hit it, it's going to rock the car back and forth and the suspension's going to get upset. By the time that tree drops, the car is probably still rocking and shaking all over the place. and it's gonna just make the car not react how you want it to. You want the car to be settled when you take off. And that's why I think I'm gonna run one of them simple stages, or smooth stage is what it's called. Smooth stage is just gonna let the car, like I said, just roll forward. It's not gonna violently abrupt the tire or suspension unless you want it to. You can set it up either way. But yeah, so long-winded update. Mustang's ripping. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the pulls on the dyno, and one race that we got on film there, and then the other half race that, you know, is what it is. But hopefully I'm not gonna let that happen again, and gonna actually be able to get out there and race on a tree or a flashlight start. So yeah, anyways, thanks for watching, guys. We're out of here for the night. Have a good night, great night, and better tomorrow.
And say bye to Rox. Not me though, it's Rox.
Bye, Roxy. You being a good girl? No, she's being a good girl because she's tired.
She. Rox. Rox. Ready?
Oh, she's not interested right now.